Welcome to the Idea Climbing Radio Show. We're coming live from 216 Creator Studio. You can find them on YouTube. Today, we're discussing how to get out of your own way and find your next big idea with Joey Drolshagen. Got that right. Joey's been featured on Fox, NBC, and CBS, along with being named one of the top business coaches in America for 3 consecutive years in the New York City Journal and Disruptors Magazine. Joey is the coach for business owners. Utilizing his subconscious mindset training method, he helps business owners and realtors across America align their conscious and subconscious minds with their vision, transforming self-sabotaging behaviors while linking accelerating habits that lead to greater success. I hope you enjoy the show. Thank you for being here, Joey. I appreciate it.
Oh, it's great to be here with you. What an opportunity. I'm looking forward to a really powerful conversation, Mark.
We're going to have some fun along the way, too. That's important.
We will.
I would love to start. We're talking about getting out of your own way to find your next big idea. As far as getting out of your own way, why are you so passionate about that? What's your story? I mean, did you have to get out of your own way at some point in life? I mean, what's the story behind getting out of your own way for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. You and I talked about, we grew up not far from each other, and it's
miles or something. We had to
So, I grew up. Yeah, I know. Isn't that funny? And here we are. We didn't know each other, and now here we are coming together and having this conversation. It's amazing the way things work. But I grew up in a very struggling blue-collar family. I watched my mom and dad just, beat themselves and their relationship, just working as many hours as they could and just exhausting themselves to raise us 5 kids. I have 4 siblings. And I remember at 9 years old thinking, man, something's not right here. Like, you guys aren't doing this right. I'm not going to be like you guys when I grow up. And then I found myself in my early 20s. And Mark, I would struggle if something came about really easy for me because I thought I didn't earn it. I thought I didn't deserve it. And it started at that point, but I didn't know how to make those changes. And at 22 years old, I became a student of the works I do today. And I am passionate about what I do because I no longer have to live like I did back then. I know what it's like to live and like even with businesses and things like that, trying to launch a business and it not working out and failure after failure after failure, ending up in corporate America because I was raised with the conditioning that a man gets a job, supports a family, and hopefully lives long enough so he can enjoy some life in retirement, right? That's the big promise for the corporate world. And I bought into that hook, line, and sinker, and I could not stand what I did in corporate America, but I built that all the way up to a vice president of sales, building massive territories, leading great sales teams, leading terrible sales teams. And eventually I got into helping organizations that were in bankruptcy get back into profitability. And the confusing part for me is I was really good at what I did, but I couldn't stand doing what I was doing. And throughout that whole process, I was learning what I teach today, how I live today, really. And it was all about like building sales territories and struggling and just, massive efforts, 3,500, 4,000 miles week after week after week after week, trying to build territories and feeling like there was such little payout for that, and I have one son, and I got to tell you this is I was married for 19 years in my mid to late 20s. My wife and I had 5 different pregnancies. We had 2 children that died, that were born at like 24, 25 weeks and lived for hours on equipment and passed. And then my son was born and he was healthy. And then we had 2 more pregnancies like the first 2, and so when I say that I adore my son, he's 27 now, but when I say I adore him, understanding the losses that I went through, it made him like the golden child in my life, And on his first birthday, I wasn't there to celebrate with him, this golden child. I was out working, building a sales territory because I thought that's what I was supposed to be doing. And man, even today, as I'm telling you that, Mark, I can feel that pain of that missed moment in my life. Mm-hmm. And as I went forward and as I started getting coaching, as I started trying to understand and change this concept, felt like I was stuck living by. I've taken a lot of coaching programs and such, and they would give me their roadmap, or they'd give me this pathway to success or all these things. And I'd spend tens of thousands of dollars taking these programs. And I walked away from every one of them thinking, there must be something the matter with me, because not one of them broke through that. And while I was doing that, I did come across some really good coaching that helped me to understand me and what my paradigms, what my patterns were, what the things were inside of my subconscious that were causing me to fall short of what I desired. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I like what you just said. What could you define for people watching now or afterwards and listening in? You just said you found really good coaching. Could you describe what do you mean by really good coaching? What are the characteristics of really good coaching?
Absolutely. So, we all have these things where, if you want something, you got to put massive actions and you got to take exhaustive efforts and you got to be willing to trade off your life for it and this and that. Well, that's how I started out with coaching. And all I did was lost more of the important parts of my life, but I couldn't do. And even when I did force myself to do all the things that said I needed to do, I didn't achieve any success. And what I have found over time is there's two types of coaching programs. One is they have your roadmap to success. They tell you what to do and how to do it and when to do it and everything else. Now that worked for the person teaching it because they laid out this process. It worked, brought them incredible success. But less than 1% of the people following that person's roadmap ever achieve anywhere near the same amount of success. So as I learned this stuff and understood the differences, and in putting together, my Life Ignited Institute with the programs I've developed under the SMT method that we'll talk about, it's based on we are all unique individuals. We all have unique conditioning within inside of us, which is our patterns, our paradigms, our habits, the things we've learned, even things we haven't firsthand experienced, but somebody told us. And we take that into our conditioning. And the subconscious is what triggers the brain waves to the actions we take or don't take. So if you're looking for a roadmap, it's going to be different than my roadmap. We can't follow a one size fit all and get the same results. So in my SMT method and everything that is behind how I coach is every person I coach, it's a unique experience for that person. So I've laid out the pathway. There's a pathway we follow and we all follow that pathway, but it allows for that to tap into that uniqueness of you. So when we're talking about your vision of what it is that you want to create, it's unique to you. It's not a vision that's stamped for every person. When we talk about developing systems of accelerating habits, they're unique systems that work for you and your modeling. They work for you and your vision, and they work for you and your subconscious conditioning. And so as I laid out the program and we start stepping into it, we start tapping into that conditioning causing us limitation, which are going to be different for you than they are for me. But then we can shift those and change those and put more empowering beliefs in place in a very rapid pace to start bringing about results for you quicker. And the next person, go ahead.
I want to talk about the SMT method we're going to talk about and your coaching and everything. I'd like to back it up just a little bit. If you had to summarize if you had to summarize, how did you get out of your own way? What was that moment or what was that program when you finally broke through and got out of your own way?
There's a few different times of things that happened and stuff. Look, I got to a point in my life, in my adult life in corporate America, I was so miserable. I started abusing alcohol to the point I had to reach out and ask for help. That was a breaking point for me. That point of being so distraught, so beat up, that I was willing to ask for help opened the doorway. That opened the doorway to every person I work with today. I cannot work with somebody that doesn't have an open mind. Mm-hmm. Somebody that knows what they know and I know, I can't do anything for them. Yeah. And I was like that for a long time. So that's one thing. The other thing is when I understood the subconscious mind. The conscious mind is everything we focus on and everything else, everything we want and all that comes. The subconscious is what holds the key, though, to our conditioning patterns, paradigms, and habits. And the subconscious is what triggers our brain waves to the actions we'll take and not take. So I get the opportunity to work with a lot of entrepreneurs who have a list of failures in their past. They're miserable in life right now, but they won't try and venture out into what they want because they failed in the past. And I help them use that failure as a stepping stone rather than a roadblock to learn from that so that then we can go forward and avoid that happening again. That's one good example of that.
I love you. You said the word paradigms. That's something in a course I won't even mention, but I'm in a course right now that's something that was new to me. I'd heard the word. I didn't know what the heck it was until someone started to explain it to me. Could you dig in a little bit? What is a paradigm? How do you change it?
Yeah, realistic. The core of a paradigms really are habits. It's the things we kind of unconsciously do The actions we unconsciously take. If you're trying to achieve something, you have a normal pattern of common actions that you will automatically inherently take based on your paradigms, based on your beliefs, your patterns, your habits, your condition, all of that's built into the paradigms. And so what it is, and one of the things I work with people on, you'll understand this, is in order to get uncommon results, you cannot take common actions. You can't do the things that are coming from the programming. Is you have to take some uncommon actions. And in doing so, most likely you're going to experience a little uncomfortability with it. And I'll give you another example specific for entrepreneurs, if I could.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you look at the core of what entrepreneurship is, it's much more like a musician or artist than it is somebody coming from, a logical engineering type of a world. Because entrepreneurship is about creation. It's about opening up to that creativeness of what it is you want to create and then going into it. But here's what happens. So many of us, for me, I'll say because of my corporate experience, we're conditioned and trained really to be strategic. You do your 90-day goals, your 6-month goals, your 1-year goals, 3-year goals, 5-year goals, and then you come up with all your to-dos and you come up with your action plans and your recovery plans and all this. And it's all based on coming from here. It's all based on coming from our head, right? And so we try to create an entrepreneur business from logic. But realistically, entrepreneurs, they don't want realistic outcomes. Logic will tell us you can get 10% growth, right, on your business, so to speak, 15%, 20% would be above average. So we have entrepreneurs out there that are trying to apply logic to a creative world. And when I can help somebody understand that programming that has them living from a logical, strategic world into opening up the possibilities is how you come about experiencing coincidences. You and I having this conversation right now, you could not have put this together and I could not have put this together, but we're here right now talking to each other. And as we open up, it's almost like we can, through that creativeness, getting out of logic, we can allow for coincidences to continue to show up. Here's the problem, though. When we're living logically through strategy and all of that, we're blocking those avenues from even seeing those opportunities from showing up. So it's not that they're not there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, it makes sense. You mentioned habits are a core of the paradigm. And it sounds like, tell me if I'm on point. It sounds like that's a start. Changing habits is the start of changing a paradigm, is the start of changing your life, is the start of getting out of your own way. For the people watching and listening, what do you do to start? And I'm intentionally using that word start changing habits. What's the starting point for that?
The very first thing it is, and when I start working with a new client, before we even step into the vision, and I've used this with corporations as well, is we have to start becoming aware of the actions we're taking. If we're living unconsciously through that programming, it just happens. Something happens, we take this action. We brush our teeth the exact same way. You could actually look at it. I had a client who said, I don't have paradigms, I can't see them. I said, tomorrow morning when you're in the shower, lather your hair 13 times. However you lather, count to 13 and be done. Uh-huh. He called me back the next day later on and cussed me out. And he goes, I couldn't do it. Because that programming is so, and it was a great scenario. I don't know where I got that idea from, Mark, but it was a great idea because it helps to see, it helps to explain that we live by our program in our subconscious. Yeah. We have to start becoming aware of that. And if we become aware of that and we have an open mind, then we can look at what else is possible. What other ways are possible? And as we do that, all of a sudden we can start shifting those. The way I do it with my clients is I have, tools we use in the beginning to start becoming aware, but then right away we come out of the gate developing what I call a dynamic vision. And I have road mapping tools for that. It's unique to the individual, but all of a sudden we start seeing a bigger possibility or a bigger potential for our business, for all areas of our life. And then as we start moving into that, we'll bump up against those patterns and paradigms. We have to, because that's what's holding us short of them.
So when you start changing habits, how do you solidify the change? I've done it. I think most people have done it where I'm so happy with 24, 72 hours. I'm so happy. This is great. Boom. Fourth day back into habit. How do you cement a changed habit once you start changing it?
We keep the best way to do that is a great question. The best way to do that is to continue building on that. So if we change something and then we just move forward, eventually we're going to falter back, and but if we change something and continue forward momentum, that change will lead to other change and other change. Not that it never happens. You take somebody who's in a negative mood all the time, and then you help them to cheer them up. And unless they do something beyond that, they're going to go back to that old model. So it's that continued growth. And what's funny about that is it's almost like as you start that process, it's how I've been able to help companies from $7.5 million a year revenue within 12 calendar months to go to $23 million a year in revenue. It's just phenomenal. And it's all about, it's not really baby steps, but it's all about letting the problem, instead of searching, and we do so much searching for what's the matter with me. Mm-hmm. All we got to do is move into that other side and start becoming more expansive. And we'll find out the areas we have to shift and we have to change.
Well, what do you mean by more expansive?
Well, okay, so somebody who runs into something where they where they're afraid to pick up the phone, right? I mean, how many salespeople do you know that it's a 10,000 pound phone to pick that up?
Yeah.
So when we get to that point and we get to start picking up the phone and it reduces that fear, then we can take that into that next level of, okay, now how do you expand all of a sudden your audience of what you're doing, or how do you expand what you're getting out of that call?
Oh.
How do you get more out of each call you're making?
Yeah.
Make sense?
That makes perfect sense. And so is that become a new habit that gets replaced as the habit?
Well, that's ultimately as part of that, you start becoming aware of it. You start putting different actions in place. And ultimately what I help each client do is develop a systems of accelerating habits. So we find out what things really work for you, what things, you and I having this conversation is exciting to me. We get to talk about this stuff and everything else. So what things can we do that are like that we can do more often, and forget doing all the things that we can't stand doing? Now, for a salesperson, picking up the phone is one of the things you have to do. So what we do is we shift perceptions on that, and we get that in a way where it becomes a game. One of the things I did, because even in sales, as big a territories as I built, I did not like picking up the phone. But what I would do is get myself into this place where I'm going to go for 10 no's today. I'm going to call enough people where I get 10, I'm not interested. And what happens is I start calling them and I get to 4 or 5, 6, and all of a sudden somebody goes, yeah, I'd be interested in meeting with you. And it's almost like, oh man, I wanted to get another no, and all of a sudden we turn it into that, and it becomes something. It takes the weight out of it takes a weight off of from the subconscious as far as what we're doing. And then all of a sudden you get that success. The next calls I start making become more exciting because I'm going off of that success going forward. So that's what I mean about building successes off of other successes.
So the successes become a new habit. Would that be right?
It does evolve into a new habit. Yes. It's not like, you get one success and that's now a new habit, but what it's doing, it's also what we focus on. I mean, we understand the process that what we focus on is in the conscious mind. The conscious mind, the subconscious just absorbs. It doesn't determine what you want and don't want. So if you're saying, I'm tired of struggling, I don't want to struggle with money anymore. The subject of that is struggle with money is what the subconscious absorbs. So we start becoming a little more careful of the words we use, the thoughts we entertain, what we're feeding into the subconscious. And as we're doing that, now we run into an area where fear steps up and stops us from taking action. Procrastination, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, God,
It took me 15 minutes to run off that 2,000-foot cliff the first time I took my first hang gliding launch off of there. And I stalled, and everything inside of me says, don't do it. And that fear was there. But I so badly wanted to experience that feeling of soaring. And we build the excitement of the vision higher than what the fear is, which allows us to take an action into it. And then we take an action. And what happens when you take an action into fear? It reduces.
You get over the fear?
Well, yeah, it reduces the fear. So you think about how I'm talking about successes. We take an action into our fear, and we get a success out of that. Even just taking the action reduces the fear. And then we take more actions into it, and eventually it's no longer a fear. Eventually now I can go up there, strap on a hang glider, and within a few seconds run off and knowing what's going to happen beyond that, because fear is just the unknowns is all it is.
Well, you had mentioned focus a few times and shifting focus, and then it leads to action. If someone realizes, okay, I have a negative focus or whatever it might be, whatever, a bad habit, how do you start shifting focus when you're aware of I'm thinking about the wrong things? How do you shift out of that? Because it could seem like it's just like people can get stuck.
Business, another sidebar here, but I'll answer that is, I get a lot of business owners who come to me and say, I'm struggling on business. And I go, why do you think that is? And they'll blame the interest rates, or they'll blame, the economy, or they'll blame where they're at, or they'll blame anything outside of them. But what I know is our success. I mean, there's businesses who thrive in a down market, just higher levels than they've ever achieved. And then there's businesses who struggle in a boom. So it's not the economy or things like that determine it. It's how we see it. It's our perceptions. So, and that's a major part in what I do, is help people see they have other options other than the perception that they're choosing. So and all of this stuff works in combination. I'm not jumping track right now. It's just all of it works together. So when somebody has fear, or they have something going on that's blocking them, a paradigm, what we do is we look at what that is, and we come up with different perceptions for that, of different ways of looking at it, and which then leads to implementing new actions, and then supporting and being right alongside with and helping them through those actions opens up the opportunities.
So what's the turning point when that moment in time where they're going this way and they shift perception to take new actions? How do you create that shift?
I help them. One of the a really good example I can give you for entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
Because even though we talked in entrepreneurship is a creator type of a process, right? It's things like that. So is one of the things I'll do is take somebody who's struggling to grow their business, and I'll have them stop taking actions.
Okay,
you think about that for an entrepreneur who's struggling getting their business going, to actually slow down and take less actions. That's almost impossible to do.
Yeah.
In doing so, though, and it doesn't have to be a long period of time, but in doing so, it allows us to realign. And then we have the vision that I start out with, that we realign to the vision versus what our human eyes see going on around us. And in doing that, we will start receiving different actions that come through the whole thing, like coincidences and everything else. It starts showing up in different actions we can take. And in identifying those actions and doing them over and over and over is how we shift the subconscious. But in taking those actions is how we achieve greater results with less effort.
Do you give them the actions to take, or is it something that comes to them because they take a step back, they realign? How do they know what new actions to take or actions to change? Because especially as an entrepreneur, it's their company. They can do whatever the heck they want. They don't have a boss like, I can only do these 3 things. I can do 100 things.
Yes.
How do you know what actions to have them start taking?
And what I tell every client I work with, I don't have your answers.
Yeah.
But I'm really freaking good at helping you identify what those are for your uniqueness, and helping through that process of identifying the paradigms, the patterns, the actions you're taking that are causing more limitation for you, so that we can shift those and move into taking those actions. I have some template things that I'll do with clients. But like I tell each one of them, this is not your lifelong plan. This is to get the ball rolling in that area. And I do that based on that unique individual. What kind of things do they like doing? What kind of things do they not like doing about their business? And I find out all that. And so then when we align that initial plan for them to start with, it starts opening the door. And as we open that door and they start going through it, they start finding more of their uniqueness in how they're doing those things and their way of doing it. So it's not like a switch that you turn on. It's a process of moving into. But I can tell you, like, I will only work with a client for 1 year at a time, because I don't want them to be dependent on me. I want to help somebody and them go out and make that major change. A lot of my clients will come back to me and say, hey, I've made it from 300,000 to 3 million. Now I want to go to 5 million. Can you help me get everything in alignment for that? And I'll do that again and stuff. But the whole thing is about finding that uniqueness, moving into that, developing those systems of accelerating habits, and all the while building the confidence in that person that you don't need somebody to give you an ABC roadmap to lead to D. You have your own avenue within you. We just tap into that.
How do you deal when they push? I would imagine you get a lot of, at least initially, and I'm imagining this, tell me if I'm on point. How do you get over the pushback of taking new actions, especially when you're breaking habits that could be 10 years old? What do you do to get them back? Get over
some
them?
of them are lifelong. Yeah, some of them are life. Mine go. My conditioning went all the way back to as a little kid. So I mean, they're. I have a story I can tell you about a kid who experienced programming at 7 years old and carried that into his 50s when him and I met. So and he carried that consistently through his life. So what it is helping to develop a vision. Mm-hmm. Right? Because you can develop a vision, and the way I do is you can see outside of your paradigms and all that to develop this vision of this unrealistic future that you desire. Okay. And then what I do is I help them start achieving successes towards that. And as we do, we become open books towards that movement into. So I may experience a little bit of hesitancy with somebody developing their vision, and that's normal. Because we're thought, like me, about that deserving and things like that, the things I used to have is so that can tamper. And I just work through that with them. But then once we get the vision, then they start looking for successes in that. Maybe it's new clients, maybe it's, somebody new to the team, maybe it's whatever it is, but some success in there. And as we start achieving those successes, I mean, you yourself, if you're doing something and you start achieving success, aren't you more open to moving into it fuller and more excited?
Oh yeah, I forget the exact chemicals, but the brain chemistry changes, and you get those hits and a hit and a hit and a hit. I want more. I want more. I want more.
Right, and so that's one of the things. I'm careful when I do it and stuff, but that's one of the things with entrepreneurs is getting them to slow down a little bit, because that goes against our grain. That goes against everything we've been conditioned to do. We have to do more. If it's not working, you got to work harder, right?
Yeah, well, and that's so general.
Getting them to go against that, I got to build success. I help them find successes even in that, to where they start opening up to that. And that's what ends up leading to people growing these huge corporations, their businesses, enterprises, whatever it is their desires are, and doing it with less effort. If I said to most entrepreneurs when I do workshops, do you believe that you can achieve unrealistic growth in your business in a 12-month period and have more freedom of time while you do it? Almost everyone will say, no, that's not possible. Yeah. But I've been able to show in almost 1,000 clients' lives over the past decade where that is. That person that went from 7.5 to almost 23, right about $23 million in 12 calendar months, mm-hmm. That was the only year of her adult life. She took 5 weeks of vacation during that same 12 months. One of them was a 2-week trip to Israel that had been on her bucket list for decades.
So it sounds like you're talking about baby steps. First of all, am I on point? You're talking about this is a baby step progression as far as success. Is that right?
It kind of is, but it's bigger than baby step. To go from 7.5 to $23 million in 12 calendar months, you can say they're baby steps into it, but they're steps into it. Yeah. There's a process to it.
So how do you deal with, because a lot of people, some entrepreneurs, they want it now. We live in the now economy. I tried it, it didn't work. So you tried it for 72 hours. How do you deal with letting them know you're going to have a progression and get them to not expect it now? Or I said it wrong. It's not you come, if I hear you right, you don't come here and just go, boom, I'm fixed. It takes some, even if it's 12 months and whatever $1 million, how do you get them to accept that it takes steps? You're not getting it tomorrow.
One of the ways I do this, and I didn't have this in coaching and all the coaching I've done and stuff, I didn't have this, but I will only work with 12 clients at a time, Mark. And the reason I do that is because I'm not a coach that talks to somebody once a week. If you and I are coaching together, you have my phone number. If you run into something, I want you to reach out right then and we work through it. And you have somebody right there at your side for the whole time we're working together to help you achieve that. And I do that because they get greater gains in doing that. And then they can reach out to me and go, man, this should have happened and it hasn't happened. And I can go, okay, well, it's 3 hours after we talked, but let's talk about, and I'll help them get in alignment with that and start looking at that differently, and not that it's like it can't happen. Things can happen as quick as we allow them to, really. But we are typically doing something to block that and hold that off. So I help them identify what that is. We make that shift and they start moving forward. Now, one of the things I'll say is if somebody said, I want to get $50 million more orders this week, I would tell them, I don't believe you think that's even possible. And if you don't think it's possible, it can't happen. When I talk to people about growing their business and opening up their free time, if they don't believe it, it can't happen. But I have 1,000 people I can have you talk to, almost 1,000 people I can have you talk to that's happened for them. And so it's really helping people believe more into what it is they want that's possible for them.
Is the process, because we mentioned it before and I want to make sure we cover it, is all of this, or at least some of it, the SMT process? Could you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, this is all. So the SMT method is subconscious mindset training. It's all about retraining the subconscious, because that in the subconscious is what triggers the brain waves to the actions we take or don't take. So if we can reprogram that, we start taking different actions. So if we come from a belief that it's not possible to grow my business and have free time, and we can shift that to opening that up to there is possible, that we, in programming that subconscious, it'll start triggering different brain waves to the actions we take or don't take. So that allows us to start expanding into things. So one of the things, and I don't say it much because I think it gets misunderstood, but we all have an unrealistic vision that we want to achieve in our life.
Yeah.
But our conditioning will only allow us to take realistic actions. So it's impossible to ever hit that unrealistic realm. It's impossible for somebody who's only willing to take realistic actions to ever achieve that kind of growth from 7.5 to 23 million or 300,000 to 3 million or on and on and on. It's impossible to ever achieve that. So it's all working together. And one of the things I have found, whether it's corporations in bankruptcy getting back to profitability, to the new entrepreneur who really wants to grow his business and doesn't know how, to somebody who's been struggling to do so, is that vision becomes our reality. We live with that vision like it is our reality. And in doing so, we cannot help but to bring that to fruition.
So how do you create a vision for unrealistic expectations? They have all this programming from childhood. They don't really believe it. I know that's true. If you don't believe it, forget about it. It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
How do you create, what's the process for creating the vision?
Yeah.
I have this unrealistic thing. You're going to help me out. What's the process for creating a vision?
Yeah. And the first thing is helping each client that I work with to expand into that unrealistic vision, right? Well, the guy that went like in the 15, 20 weeks I worked with him and stuff initially, he went from $34,000. The guy went from $34,000 a month. All he wanted to get to was $50,000 a month so he could start tickering down the line of credit he had been living off of to cover that gap between his expenses and revenue. Within 3 months, he went from average of $34,000 a month to over $250,000 a month. Now, when he went above $50,000 and got to 70, all of a sudden, he was more open to that. I finally got him to settle a vision of $175,000 a month. So when he surpassed 50 and went to 70, he was instantly more open to that. As he did that, he went to 250. And he's the guy that came back to me and said, man, I want to get to $500,000 and I want you to help me get things in line. The vision is all about, one of the things when we have visions, one of the things we're taught in goal settings is to set your 90 days, 6 months, 1 year, all this and that and everything else. But if you try and set a vision for even a year from now, Mark, it's going to be so tied to your current situation, circumstances, and conditions. It can only get so big. So one of the things I do when I'm working with people on setting visions is I look out years. Because if you talk 5 years out, let's say, in 5 years, your whole life could be different. Everything could be different. So we can use going out there to widen the potential of that vision. It doesn't mean it needs to take that 5 years to come to reality. It means we can go out there and broaden that vision like that. And forget about the go on.
How do you do that when you say widen the possibility or widen the vision?
When we talk the vision, we talk 5 years out there that we develop the vision. If you're like right now, if you're 5 years out from where you are right now, and what does your life look like? You start describing that vision of what it is, that endpoint you want to get to. You'll see a much bigger potential than you will if you look out 1 year, right? Mm-hmm. So we're taught logically to think out a year, 2 years, things like that. When we look out beyond that, we can develop a bigger possibility for what it is we desire.
How do you overcome the roadblock of logic?
That's personally That is one of my hardest things that I've worked on and still continue to work on. And it's one of the hardest things for my clients, because when something's not working right away, we want to go back to logic. We want to go back to applying strategy. We want to go back to, and sometimes I'll call this like my thinking mind. I'll call it my antichrist. Because what it does when I'm living through my mind and my strategies and my best thoughts, it can only get me so far.
Yeah.
But when I get into that place of allowance, when I get into that place of the flow, I call it flow state. When you get into that place, everything can be working for you, and I can open that up. But I can't live through my logical mind and through that at the same time. I have to choose one or the other. So for me, I play games with it. There's times I'll play pickleball 12 to 15 hours a week. And I kid you not, in doing so, I got to a point of frustration after COVID and things like that. And it was like, you know what, man, I'm doing everything I can do. I'm working weekends and evenings and all this stuff, trying to do this stuff. And I went back to logic. And it's like, I can't stand doing this anymore. Like, I'm sure entrepreneurs, a lot of them would say it's almost to the point where it's like, is this worth it? Versus having the job and you go there 9 to 5 and you do your work and you get your paycheck. And, and so I was struggling with that a little bit. And I finally said, you know what? I freaking quit. I quit. I'm not doing anything. And exactly what I'm talking about with entrepreneurs. I stopped to fill that time. I started going to the gym more. I started going to I was playing pickleball 12 to 15 hours a week. I was out there every day, got to know a lot of good people and stuff. In doing that, I ended up going from 3 to 12 clients that came out of the blue. People showed up from referrals. They showed up from a podcast I did 2 years ago. They show up from a referral from this person or that person. And I crossed paths with them, and somebody I was playing pickleball with, or somebody came across here or there. And within a very short period of time, my business boosted up like that. And so today, and it's not pickleball. I mean, I love pickleball. I love to say just go out and play pickleball. But what it is, I got me out of the way.
So how do you get into flow state?
Exactly, with all the tools I'm talking, that the things we're talking about right now, with the vision, with stepping into the vision, with determining those systems of accelerating habits, not what do I think I need to do? What am I really good at doing? I'll give you an example. I work with a lot of realtors. One of the things you see a lot of is realtors doing live on social media, right? Yeah. You ever see somebody doing a live and you can tell they're uncomfortable, they can't stand what they're doing, that they're doing it for some other reason other than a joy, right?
Yep.
How long do you listen to those people?
I'm scanning to the next post.
I do too. I feel bad for them. And I just kind of, okay. Now, have you seen somebody, when you turn the camera on, it's like they come to life. They're there, they're comfortable, they're home on that camera. And how long do you listen to them?
Until they shut it down.
So that first person, I will take and find something else they like to do. Maybe videos isn't your thing. Let's do something else. That second person, I'll have them do more of that, because that lights them up. And when we get into that point where we're lit up, we're excited about what we're doing. We're excited about how the things we get to do and the life we get to live. All of a sudden, things just start attracting to us. When we're doing the other side, we're repelling things away. We're pushing things away from us.
Well, we've covered a lot of material in a short period of time. A lot of material. So I'm going to ask, could be a hard question. I don't know. But if you were to say, if someone realizes I need to get out of my own way, oh my God, and what you're saying is resonating. If you were to tell them, you know what, if nothing else, do this one thing to get started. If nothing else, do this one thing. What would you say to do one thing to start moving the needle today?
I would tell them, other than awareness of the actions they're taking, is I would tell them, look out 3 to 5 years. What is it you want? And start defining that, literally writing it down on paper. When we document something, it takes on a deeper meaning. It has, we're more attached to it by doing so. And start writing that out in as much detail as you can, as much clarity as you can. Clarity is power. The more clarity you can put into that, the more power you're going to have into it. And then once you have that written out, start coming from that place. Start putting that on, getting into that feeling tone, feeling like what that really feels like to be the person living that life. As you do so, you'll start noticing a change in how you feel about your situation, circumstances, and conditions around you.
This has been awesome. If people want to learn more about you, where should they go online?
Anybody can go to coachwithjoey.com, schedule a quick call with me. You can go to ifgtcoach.com to my website and see stuff there. Any social media by Joey Drillshagen. I'm sure you have my name in the notes with the last name and stuff. It's not an easy one. And any social media, Google, anywhere you go will bring you to where I'm at. But anybody who wants to talk about these, coachwithjoey.com, all of this is my personal calendar out there so you can schedule time where we don't get interrupted.
Awesome. And for people out there, if you want to recap or you tune in a little bit late, ideaclimbingradio.com. The entire episode will be up there within a day after this. Thank you so much for the time, Joey. I appreciate it. This has been awesome.
It's really enjoyable, Mark.